Fred Bear commemorated in song by Ted Nugent. This is the American Hunters theme song from Ted Nugent. Ted, tell us about how you wrote the song and your relationship with Fred Bear.
Well, I'm a lucky man. I was born in 1948. Les Paul had just electrified the guitar. How cool was that? And so there was a bit of a stranglehold I found myself in as a young boy. And at the same time, this legendary visionary of conservation and a higher level of awareness hunting style, Fred Bear, was on a hard course promoting bow hunting in my home state of Michigan, where I was born. Now, I was born in 48. My dad was already a bow hunter because of the Fred Bear influence in that state. So by the time I could walk, all kids get a suction cup arrow kids bow and start shooting stuffed animals and stuff. And because my dad was a bow hunter and he'd practice out in the yard with his long bow and a bale of hay, that it was just a little bit more imprinting on me. And something did happen that is the mystical flight of the arrow in my life, both literally and figuratively. And I couldn't get enough of that archery. So I'd get a next bow when I got to be 4 or 5 years old. Then I'd get a little bit, I'd make my own bows in the backyard out of some baling twine and an old, sapling tree that I would cut down. And I'd make my own arrows. And I was really bitten by this primal scream of the mystical flight of the arrow. Then by the time I could figure out who this Fred Bear guy was, because I'd start seeing him in magazines and then on television with the American Sportsman, but before I even knew there was a Fred Bear, I would follow my dad through the woods every October in northern Michigan, bow hunting for white-tailed deer. I was too young to really grasp what was actually occurring, but all of a sudden, by my 5th or 6th birthday, we would stop at this little shack in Grayling, Michigan, every October, and my dad introduced me to Fred Bear, this tall, lanky gentleman with all this archery stuff and lots of arrows. And, of course, all archers love lots of arrows because, they're hard to come by when you were growing up like that. Well, I became friends with Fred from our visits every October. Pretty much every year we'd catch him there, and we'd go to the Grayling restaurant and have a cherry pie and milk. And we never killed a deer, but I was always more and more fascinated and intrigued. I was able to kill some small game and shoot some carp with my bows and arrows. And by the time I left Michigan in 65 to finish my last 2 years of high school after my dad was transferred to the Chicago area, when I went back in 67 upon graduating from high school, I went back to Grayling, Michigan, where now this little shack had turned into an enormous industry,
right,
an enormous museum. And I reintroduced myself to Fred, and of course I was getting long hair and playing some pretty rowdy guitar by then, and I think I scared the poor man.
Right.
But make a long story short, because it is a long story, and it's a fascinating and it's a very emotional story for me, but Fred invited me into his life, and I would bring my children up to Fred and Henrietta's home there on the Ausable River, and we became buddies, and he learned to love that the energy and the impact of my music was connecting with people with the good message. He particularly, saluted me and thanked me over and over again for promoting my militant stance against drugs and alcohol and tobacco and the promotion of conservation and a higher level of environmental awareness and the dedication to excellence through the mystical flight of the arrow and the archery discipline. Well, when I spent my last hunting camp with Fred in the fall of 1987, after doing it many years and communicating with Fred, and just some wonderful experiences. He was carrying his oxygen tank around with him that fall, as he had for a number of years, and he told me about, I was aware that a lot of people in the hunting industry hated me because of the intense rock and roll, and they thought my long hair meant drugs. They're just stupid, unsophisticated people. They would make judgments before doing any research at all.
Right.
And Fred took me literally under his arm. We went for a walk in the beautiful fall woods. I'll try not to cry here for you. And he told me to keep promoting it like I was promoting it. He said, never back down. And that my critics were idiots. And that he really appreciated the way I was promoting his sport. And then he died.
Yeah.
One morning I got up and I grabbed my guitar, and that song happened. I didn't write anything down. I didn't write any words. I didn't write any music. It just happened.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. And I was in such an emotional wreck, like I am right now, that my wife came in and she held me and consoled me, and she helped me keep singing it. And I called Michael Lutz and Gunnar Ross, my band, and I said, I got to go in the studio right now. They said, all right, let's do it. And we went in, and we came out an hour later with that song. Never wrote down a word, just showed him the pattern, played it one time, caught it on tape. We mixed it. We got Fred's voice off of the Kurt Gowdy record and put it in the mix at the end, and mysticism occurred in that studio. And an hour later, we came out with What You Hear Today, and I had 2 cassettes, one for me and one for Fred's widow, Henrietta. And when I sent it to Henrietta, she called me and couldn't talk on the phone. She just wept uncontrollably. And finally called me back when she regained some composure and said she needed some more for her family. Now remember, Mike, this was not a planned thing. It was a pure emotional upheaval for my love and admiration for this great man. And somebody, to this day nobody knows who, somebody snuck a cassette of that song that we recorded and mixed in an hour. And they snuck it to a radio station in Detroit, and Doug Podell played it on a hunch because he liked it. He didn't even know what there was. People thought it was a song called Fred the Bear.
Right.
And he played it, and since that day in 1989 when he played that song, it's been the number 1 requested song in Michigan and Wisconsin for 21 years. No other song has ever had more requests than Fred Bear, wherever guys have got the balls to break the status quo playlist and play this very special song. And this song, Mike, has been played at more funerals, more graduations, more family reunions, more celebrations, more gatherings of hunters and families reuniting after years of disputes and fights. This song has a life of its own. Every night I play it on stage, it's the most difficult thing I've done because I have to sing the song and not let it own me.
Right.
It's magic. It's a magic piece of music that all musicians dream they can convey. It's that song was a channeling. Mm-hmm. I channeled everyone's love for the Fred Bears in their lives, their dads, their uncles, their grandpas, their hunting buddies, their childhood friends who we've had to say goodbye to. And people listening right now to Mike Tomano's Wild and Free, until you hear that song performed live and look into the faces of those people in that audience and see the tears and the joy, I'm sorry, you've got a little piece of your spirit that has not come to life yet. It's magic, and it was a direct touch by the hand of God that I was able to create that tribute to that great man.
And what a tribute it is. An artistic statement that covers the spectrum of emotions that any American hunter feels. It is the essence of the campfire, the camaraderie of the hunt. When my father passed away, I had a Ted Nugent CD in my car. All the years of us hunting and fishing together and all the hikes through the woods and all the cherished memories I had of him filling me with the love of nature and being a participant came to the forefront as I took his Eagle Claw rods and I packed them all in my car. And as I got in, Fred Bear came on, and my wife and I drove and listened to this. And I still remember where I was at. I was on Archer Road through Willow Springs, where there's a nice stretch of forest preserves for about 5 miles. And the moment that In the Wind, He's Still Alive came on, I had to pull the car over it summed up our life together in one moment. And it's
Well, Mike,
it's
I
a magical
cannot
song.
begin to count the thousands of correspondence I've gotten
Yeah.
with that same story. Probably one of the most powerful ones was a Michigan family that grew up hunting together. The father had died, and there became a feud between two brothers, whether it was about the estate or just other petty arguments.
Sure.
They hadn't spoke to each other in like 20 years. One lived in the UP and one lived down in Ohio. They both heard the song Fred Bear the same day, and they both called each other and left messages that they had to talk now. And those brothers shared that story with me, and because of that song, it made them realize that they had a duty as brothers to carry on what their dad had taught them instead of the stupidity of the feud they were in. And it's that powerful. It's a mystifying song. Another, it's just mountaintop example of what that song has done is every year for many years we are contacted by families who are about to say goodbye to a little boy or a little girl because of a terminal illness. And we're talking little kids 5 and 6 years old. They're not fans of Stranglehold. They were only aware that there was a guy named Ted Nugent because of our Spirit of the Wild show on the Outdoor Channel, and the kids love it because it's brutally honest. It's not staged or produced. It's just documenting the way we live, and the kids pick up on that immediately. And every time one of these little boys and girls request to go hunting with Ted Nugent before they die, they always ask for me to play Fred Bear for them, and of course I do. And boy, you want to talk about a challenge.
How do you get through it? Yeah.
The hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But I do it every time, and I hold myself up. I can't break down because these kids are strong, so I have to be strong. So that's a cycle of life coming out in music that these little kids connect with, and they want to hear this song before they die. I don't know, is there a more powerful statement available than that?
No.
I don't think there is.
No.
So I'm a blessed man to have known Fred, that I was given these visions and capabilities by God to create a piece of music that embodies our love for our families and our kin and all the Fred Bears in our lives, and that even brand new generations immediately pick up on the spirit of that song. And it helps soothe these families in the traumatic time of saying goodbye to a child. I don't know. I'm a pretty imaginative guy. I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm a pretty aware guy, but I'm not aware of or smart enough to even think that there might be something more powerful than to have a piece of music that people cling to say goodbye to a loved one. It's magic.
What a career statement, and it really is the spirit of the wild. People say, Mike, you put so much emphasis on the outdoors. I don't even use the word sport for fishing or hunting. It's so much more. It is the essence of life, and here it is in song. It's Fred Bear.